Hello everyone, this is the day 11 of the 30 days of identity fundamentals. Today we'll be discussing about role-based access control. In this session, I'll be covering an overview of role-based access control. In the previous session, we were talking about authorization model, authentication model, JML. Now, couple of days we'll be more exploring more on RBAC, ABAC, different types of access control models, which is very crucial when you're working and creating policies. So right now we do create policies, but we do not have much idea about why we are creating policies or what type of policies we are creating, whether it is in any IGA module you may consider, whether SailPoint, Savient, or even in Okta or even in Ping. The access module is something that you use across system, right? It is not something that is specific to a tool, but there are tools who do that specifically on a larger scale. So that's where I think you all have heard about RBAC on IGA platforms. So, but this concept dates back a long time when we had AD groups also. So we'll explore the core concepts of RBAC, its benefit, how it differs from other access control models, and practical considerations for implementation. Okay. So first one is introducing RBAC, role-based access control. As the name suggests, you are giving access based on the roles and responsibility. Let's break this down in this way. So it's a method of regulating access to computers or network resources based on roles of individual users within an organization. In simpler terms, you have three different types of departments. You have the IT, you have payroll, you have finance. Okay. Now different types of application and three different types of users. On a high level, this user who has joined as a IT engineer, as a payroll admin, and as a finance leader, say. So the purpose of role-based access control is this user should only have access to resources in the IT application. Payroll should have access to the payroll system, and the finance leader should have access to the finance system. That is the overall concept of role-based access control. Okay. Instead of assigning permissions directly to the users, permissions are assigned on a role. That is a role that is created and users are tagged to that role. Now that role could have multiple different applications also. There could be 3 applications, there could be 5 applications, 6 applications under this role, which is the finance role or the IT role or the payroll admin role. But the purpose is you're not going and assigning users and tagging that to application, because this permutation combination goes multifold and it is difficult to manage. Instead, you create a role, assign all the applications, and tag a user here based on the role. Okay, so some of the core concepts of RBAC. There are different components that we can that we should be aware of when we are implementing role-based access control. The first component is, as we all know, the user. Whom are we providing those permissions, right? It is the user themselves. Then what role is it going to have? Is it an admin role, a user role, an auditor role? What is the role? And role itself is not going to define what level of access you will get. It is the permissions. Then with this permissions, what you get, you can edit, you can read. Okay. Then there is something called as role assignment. You are assigning that role. And then once all of that is happened, then you have sessions that you have established. A session is established. Okay. So you have a user who has been granted a certain role, and role has permissions, and that assignment, when it happens, the process of assigning users to specific role is called role assignment. And then a session is set up, right, where the user can interact, and permissions are typically enforced during that session. Then only when you log into that portal, get access, then you will be able to perform those functions of edit, read. Okay, that's the different components you should know when you're creating this whole RBAC. You cannot say I've created a role but there is no user. Or you cannot say I have created a role, but I'll directly give them access to certain permissions. How will you give them? Again, that is going back to giving granular level access on the application level, which we are avoiding here. Okay. So role-based access control structure has permissions, right? Actions users can perform, users who are interacting with the system, sessions, which is through which user interaction is happening post authentication, the roles, job functions defining these permissions, and assignment. So you have a permission here in this one, and you have a user sitting here. Okay. In between, you have this role. And when this role assignment happens, where it is actually connecting all these things, user, permissions, and roles, then you are able to establish a session and log in. So benefits of RBAC. So RBAC offers several advantages over other access model. Simplified access management, improved security, reduce admin overhead, enhance compliance, scalability, and centralized management. So these are some of the benefits that we see. Okay. First is it simplifies the entire access management thing. It improves the security, right? By bringing everything in a centralized place, you are not keeping your access here and there lying around, and because of which you will have all the unauthorized access and those kind of thing. And an attacker may get access to these kind of accounts or may have access to these kind of permissions. So then we have improved security. By centralizing permission management, RBAC reduces the risk of assigning inappropriate permissions to the user. Then we have reduced admin overhead because RBAC also automates the entire process, or else you'll go end up adding users one by one. Then you have enhanced compliance. It enhances the compliance because a lot of the time people are using IGA platforms most of the time for compliance reason. Then you can scale up very well. Again, everything is centralized and managed in a centralized way. So RBAC versus the other access control. But we'll go through this in our upcoming sessions, so I'll skip this for now. Implementing RBAC, right? The overall implementation cycle is first you identify the roles, right? Let's say admin. Then you are putting what are the permissions you need in the admin. Edit, right? Update, delete. You are assigning the permissions. Then you are creating this block and then you're adding this user there. And finally, you're implementing the RBAC. You test the RBAC, monitor and maintain it. And this process goes on. Any new role that you want to create or new RBAC, you start from here. And this goes on. Monitoring and maintenance plays a very critical role. Test and validation also to check if the access has been provided correctly or not. So all of these are the key things that you have to do apart from the implementation. So practical considerations are like first is granularity of roles, determines the appropriate level of granularity for roles. Too few roles may result in users having excessive permissions. Let's say you have blocked like IT role, uh, finance role, But in IT also you'll have many teams, right? You cannot give like a block role and everyone who goes in IT gets every access. This is also not something that we should be doing. There has to be some level of granularity on each role hierarchy. Considering implementing a role hierarchy where role inherits permission from the parent role. This can simplify management and reduce redundancy. Or else you'll end up creating, for example, here also you have 3 application. Here also you have 2 applications. Here you have 5 application. But here there are common 2 application common here. 1 application is common here. 3 application is common here. You're simply creating multiple redundant roles, right? Auditing dynamic role assignment should be there. It should not be like you're going and manually making the changes. Auditing and reporting and tooling, utilizing RBAC tools to streamline the process of creating assigning. So some of the example, we'll move into the example scenario and we'll go into how it works in the organization, and then we'll go to our interview prep and assignment. Okay. So consider a document management system. We define the following: administrator roles, editor, reviewer, viewer. Okay. Permission would then be assigned to these roles. For example, editor role would have the permissions to create, edit, delete. Okay. While users will only be able to do their job functions. This is an example scenario. Basic, you can go and do that practice in any system. Yeah. HR manager role, access to employee records and payroll. Finance will have access to invoices. But both will not be like HR will not be able to check anything on the payroll. Finance will not be able to check anything on the employee record. Okay. So some of the risk are role explosion. Too many roles gets created when you are going through the RBAC model. Hence, we have ABAC and those kind of model, which we'll discuss in the next one. Difficult to maintain if roles are not clearly designed. And this is becoming a really big overhead for a lot of companies. There are too many roles are being there. Interview tips, definitely it is really important to understand RBAC. Always tie this to some application, some IGA tool. Okay, it should not be like you're just randomly talking about RBAC and you have not implemented. So try to implement it and also talk about the why you're implementing, what you're implementing, and also in every interview talk about the challenges. Okay. Then role explosion is something, a good use case that you can first fix it in your organization, review it, fix it, and then go back and put this on the resume and then try to explain this in the interview also. Assignment for today, define 2 roles in your organization, write the name and list the permission each should have. Okay, so this concludes role-based access control. And just to few things, it is a very powerful, effective mechanism and something that has been used from a very, very long time ago, right? To manage roles and permissions. Eventually, the purpose is to simplify the entire user access management, improve security, also the administrative overhead, and solve compliance issues. So with that, I will see you in day 12. Thank you.